1-0 to the Arsenal. So that's good enough for some, but not everyone was thrilled from the outcome with Friday's game. And joining me today to talk about that and much more are Football London's chief Arsenal writer, Tom Canton, AFTV's Cecil G. Thomas, and talkSPORT's Luke Henry. So welcome along to everyone to Inside Gooners. First of all, Tom, I just have to say a huge congratulations to becoming Football London's chief Arsenal writer. So a round of applause to you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Of course. You have to. It's Christmas as well. You have to give people congratulations over Christmas. So then
Indeed.
Let's go straight into the Ipswich game. Like we were saying, it's a 1-0. It was a win. A win is a win, but not everyone was best pleased. So, Tom, is it fair to say that we expected more, or is that just too greedy from us?
I don't think it's greedy to ask for more goals, especially when you've seen how many goals Arsenal could score, especially last season, and broke the goal tally of the Invincibles. So no, I don't think it's greedy for Arsenal fans in particular to want more, especially when you've got that much dominance. I mean, I was sitting in the press box 25 minutes in, and we had 92% possession. It was nuts to be in that much control, and yet to have created relatively not enough in terms of real big opportunities to score. And then when other chances did come, even in the second half, we didn't take them either. So I understand why there was some, apathy, I guess, about kind of the outcome of the game and the lack of goals. But the 3 points remains, the most important things. The amount of times we've seen Manchester City grind out results and go on to win the league, it's got really frustratingly annoying to see them do that. And so this was Arsenal doing that on the day. And we just got to hope that those kind of issues maybe that we see don't come up and we eradicate them in the weeks to come.
Well, of course, because at the end of the day, 1-0 is a win. So if we can just take the win, we're going to take the win. What about you, Luke? Would you say it was greedy or?
No, but for me, the frustrating thing is I just think Friday's performance was all about mindset, which I think is a little bit of a concern. Look, we know that Ipswich came with a back five and it's up to us to break them down, and they defended really well. But it was more the second half performance that was really, that concerned me a little bit, purely because I felt like we actually wanted to go into a 4-4-2 block, was happy with the 1-0. And then we sort of said to Ipswich, come on to us now. Now, I know Arteta he's so dominant on control, but I feel like a game against Ipswich, you can let the shackles off a little bit and try and go for the second and the third nil. And I think it was with the crowd that was saying, come on, Arsenal, let's get the ball forward a little bit. And I think you have to look at 24 hours earlier when we're watching Liverpool play Leicester. And it's a good marker to look at both promoted sides in the Premier League. And you look how Liverpool go at home to Leicester, and it's just relentless. They want to score goals, create chances. And we were more than happy with the 1-0, which is fine because we got the 3 points. But at the same time, you're running the risk. And in the last couple of minutes, the ball goes into the penalty box. Anything can happen. A ball scrambles on the edge of the box. Calvin Phillips could put it in for 1-1. Then we're coming away from the stadium, drop points. And, the title was really looking unlikely. So, yes, I was happy with the win because we need to win football matches. But I do think if we wanted to, we could have done it. I just don't know why we decided to sort of sit back and just be relaxed on a 1-0. I know it's the famous 1-0 for the Arsenal, but I don't think we needed to do that at that game, if I'm being brutally honest.
That's exactly how I was going to come into it as well there, Luke. I was going to say, no, normally we're singing with pride 1-0 to the Arsenal, but against Ipswich, you wanted a little bit more. And I think fans are right to want a bit more. I think we're very, we look at recency. You spoke about Liverpool against Leicester, and you see how they dispatched of them. You look at the last game we played against Palace just before we played Ipswich. We scored a plethora of goals, and you think, okay, Ipswich should be even more. Do you know what I mean? After you've just seen us, dominate against Crystal Palace, and that's kind of what I think a lot of fans were looking forward to seeing and hoping for. And then you see a 1-0. Obviously, again, we've all mentioned we're happy with the win. Of course, we are. I wouldn't be silly not to, but I expected more. I want to see more from Arsenal. It feels similar to what we watched them of this season when it's a low block. How do you break them down? Why can't we do it more? We scored in the 23rd minute against Ipswich, and I was like, now we're going to kick on. And it felt like we were doing what we did towards the start of the season when we were scoring one and then sitting back a little bit. And like you said, letting teams come on to us. So, happy, but then, we're greedy. I don't know if we're even greedy. I think it's justifiable. I think it's understandable. It's something I want to see from Arsenal. But I must say, though, just quick with Ipswich, no teams really battered them apart from the game before us, when I think it was Newcastle. No one's really got more than 2 goals against them and actually and smash them to pieces. I would expect that of Arsenal, but it didn't happen. And I think they can be quite tough to really, embarrass. But I expect Arsenal to have done that. It's a shame we didn't, but we won. So I'm happy.
Well, that's the thing, like you were saying, Cecil, we go 1-0 in pretty early, and then we're all sitting there like, right, come on, when's the second, third, fourth coming? And then when it doesn't, and we get to that 90 minutes and we've got plus 4 minutes, everyone's shaking, the legs are shaking, everyone's nervous again, because that 1-0, as much as we've got it and there's confidence, there's still but anything can happen if we suddenly slip up. So then, speaking of that, what do you think we look like without Saka?
Oh, good question. I mean, we got a taste of it, obviously, against Ipswich, and it wasn't. I mean, I wasn't happy with it, but I mean, what can you do? The poor boy's been injured. Obviously, I think everyone must have seen a post of him after his surgery, saying he's going to come back stronger and whatnot. Really bad mindset from me, but when it happened, I was actually I was in Sierra Leone at the time, was watching a game, and listen, I was sat next to Abue, and he said, he's done. Like, the way he put his hand up, he's grabbing his hands. He knew straight away. And normally you think, you don't know, especially in today's game, people go down, you don't know if they're going to be gone or not. But he was like, no, that's serious. So when I saw it and he said that, I was fearing for the worst, and it seems like it's going to be a long time out. I think it was rumored to 6 or 10 weeks. But I've seen reports of some sense at the end of the season, which it could be possible because of the time, like Mikel Arteta says, depending on the scar tissue is. I've had hamstring injuries before where they're not curious. You don't really know when you're fully back because they can just go at any time, and you want to make sure it's full strength. But what was quite cynical of me when it happened, I don't know why I said this, but I said, I can't believe it's taken this long. And that sounds so bad, but it's because he plays so much and we rely on him so much. And I was like, we need to rest him. At times, maybe, I mean, me and Robbie argue about this, you need to play your best players, I understand that, but he gets used so much. So I felt really bad when I saw him go down, and I am worried going forward. Obviously, Martinelli played his position at the time. I think there is a difference. I think it's very clear to see from most fans will say this, even once we get used to someone playing that position, no one's going to be Bukayo Saka. Let's be real. No one's going to have that consistency, the trust on the ball, and the ball protection that Saka has and what he does for this Arsenal team. So Arteta's got to find a solution. I'm not going to say I'm over the moon with Martinelli playing there because it's not the same level. I don't think we'll get the same level, but at least the January window is literally just the eve, what we said before recording, of the January transfer window opening. Hopefully we can address that position. I know fans want a striker, but I actually think they need someone who can play across the three that can be effective. Again, it won't be a Bukayo Saka in the January window. It's going to be near on impossible, but I hope we can address that. Come January, or bring Sterling back because he's a forgotten man as well.
See, I'm just getting annoyed at how I have to keep saying we need to wrap all our players up in bubble wrap. I mean, there was weeks of saying it with Odegaard, and now we're saying it with Saka again. It's getting so frustrating that, and even Saka is indisposable, especially with Odegaard as well. We've got these incredible players, and it's so hard to find, in inverted commas, a replacement if they get injured. And it's just constantly... like I said, I'm constantly fed up of having to say I want to wrap them up in bubble wrap the entire time, because that's all it feels like during the season. But anyway, Luke, what do you think? How do you think we played without Saka?
I'm in agreement with Cecil. When he got injured, I kind of just knew. And it was like, it was an empty feeling because I was like, I'm gutted, I'm devastated. But it was a matter of when, not if. It was just natural because, coming on against Preston in the Cup, and I'm thinking, brilliant. But we're 4-1 up away at Sporting, take him off, keeps him on. And I'm just like, little things like that. And I always say it, and Ipswich is an example, right? 10 minutes to go, they take off the lap. I'm thinking, why on earth do they take off the lap? But it's probably because they want to get the minutes, keep those 10 minutes, because they could be so crucial for 6-7 weeks of the campaign. We can talk about how negative it is. Saka's, this is another conversation, but he's world class for me. We won't go into that debate, but he's simply sensational. And I still don't think, as a fan base, we give him enough credit, and I don't think we big him up, but that's another conversation. However, as fans, we weren't really sure how we were going to line up. So you can use that, in my eyes, as a bit of a positive. Because if I don't know, and we're thinking that Martinelli could be on the right, and we're thinking that Jesus could be on the right, and Havertz can play through the middle, and Trossard could come in, then how are the opposition going to know? And I think on Friday, we missed a massive opportunity to be more fluid in the way we played. Because for the first 15 minutes, I saw Havertz was everywhere. And actually, for the first half, Havertz was the one everywhere. I saw him at right back, I saw him at centre half, I saw him at left back, picking up the ball in the midfield role, and I thought, great. But then, as the game went to 1-0, Trossard was on the left, Martinelli was on the right, and Jesus was striker. There was still lacking a little bit of fluidity, a bit of movement, especially against a low block like Ipswich. So And that is all our attackers, by the way. Bar Sterling being injured, obviously now Saka's out long term. That's what we've got. And I was thinking, this could be a little bit more off the shackles, a bit more free, a bit more creative, because if Ipswich are going, I thought he was on the right, and then it's like, but Trossard's popped up there, and then Jesus is off the left, and then Martinelli. I know we saw it a little bit in the second half about Martinelli playing in the number 9 position, but I don't know. I think we need a bit more freedom, a bit more creativity, and I think this goes on to a longer point. I think he's basically in a conundrum. He doesn't know what to do in terms of control and being vulnerable. So, for example, if you look at the games against Fulham, Everton and Ipswich, we had so much control of the ball, so much domination, but we didn't really clear-cut chances. However, the Fulham game, we probably would have won that 8 times out of 10. But then you look at the Palace game, and Odegaard, Havertz and Partey with his midfield 3. Not really sure, as a midfield 3, the amount of combinations that midfield played. But we found ourselves 3-1 up at half-time, and it was ironic that it was Saliba and Gabriel was probably their poorest game of the season, because there was no protection from the midfield. But then you're asking yourself, if you go a little bit more vulnerable and a bit more brave, you can win a game 5-1. However, if you are so reliant on your control and you restrict that creative freedom, it seems to have an impact on our chance creation. So in regards to Saka, we know how much of he is going to be a miss, but we need to try and use it as much as we can as a positive and try and surprise people with what we're going to line up. Who's to say that Havertz can't play wide right? He's played there for Leverkusen, and we might go Martinelli through the middle and Jesus off the left, just to give someone a little bit of freedom and creation. I don't know. I probably don't.
Yeah.
But it's
Just quickly, sorry.
Just saying, we know how negative it is, and we can't shrug our shoulders. The only positive is it is a week before the January transfer window. However, we've seen the news about potentially Fabio Vieira coming back. If that's the answer, I'm not too sure. I think it needs to be Fabio Vieira and someone else. But if he's not coming back, we still need someone else. Or someone to add to that, because right now, I don't know if that's enough firepower to take us to the Premier League, especially against the team we're competing against, who have 6 really, really clinical attackers that want to go forward and want to score goals.
Makes a good point, just with the whole confusing the opposition. And also, Liverpool have played Diaz in the 9, and that's like a Martinelli. Listen, obviously, people are going to get at me. Not right now, but Martinelli has proved that he can score goals, and he's a good finisher when he had that blinding season. So, and that is kind of basically the similar to what Liverpool have done. You can make it work. I mean, Arteta knows the players best, so it'll be interesting to see what he goes with. But yeah, and also you mentioned Tom as well. Yeah, Fabrizio obviously nullified the whole Fabio Vieira returning, but yeah, it wouldn't be my choice even if that was going to happen. But yeah.
What about you, Tom? What have you got to say about it?
I think first of all, this is the first game we've started without Saka on the right hand side in goodness knows how long. So the idea the team is suddenly just going to click and it's going to be fine, and we're going to see the best of Arsenal without Saka is unrealistic. We obviously still dominated the game as we saw. I think that's in part due to us, in part due to how Ipswich, of course, approached the game. And I think had Arsenal managed to get the second goal, you would have seen Ipswich come out a lot much sooner. I think they recognised that as long as they can stay in the game and have a 1-goal deficit, they could nick something at the end, and that's why the game played the way it did. I think that when it comes to kind of with Arteta and Saka, Arteta's kind of, he's half for me at fault, because you can point to games where Saka shouldn't have played. He shouldn't have started at home against Bolton in the League Cup. That's ridiculous why he needs to start there. He doesn't. But then, of course, you look at the minutes he's played in comparison to, say, Mohamed Salah for Liverpool, and Salah's played more minutes than him this season. And that's because the players of that stature and that magnitude in a side play. And they, when you're not reliant, but when you're that, imposing with someone so dangerous as Saka, and also stylistically, when you don't really have somebody similar to that, it does mean that the system that you have developed and cultivated over years does have somewhat of an attachment to those profiles. I think the reason that a lot of fans are irritated is because obviously we've known for so long that Saka's been so, important to us there, that we've not necessarily gone out and brought in somebody to be that depth option. The issue with that, of course, is it's incredibly difficult to go out and find someone, not just who's good enough to be that player that when Saka's not there can come in and do a good job, but convince a player of that standing when they're not going to get regular game time in that role, because Saka's going to start pretty much every single game to come to the club. I think what Arsenal have got now, if there was a time that Saka would get injured, other than it being just before the summer transfer window, this is probably the best time it could have happened, because going into a January window where you've not got Saka for the next 2+ months or whatever it's going to be, you've got in a much stronger position in a negotiating standpoint to talk to a player and say, look, you're going to come in and you're going to play, because we've not got our starting right winger, and you're going to be able to show to people and show to Arteta and the team and whoever else that you deserve to be a starting figure in this team. And when Saka comes back, he also has to go and fight for his place. But I think you have to kind of tie that in with them being somebody who could also be versatile enough to cover other positions. So when Saka does come back, inevitably they can play with him, not just in place of him.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Unfortunately, Saka's infinite fitness finally ran out. And like we've all said, it was probably bound to happen at some point. And if at any time it's going to happen, yeah, let's have it days before the transfer window opens. So obviously he has had his surgery. He's not back until at least we're looking at March. How do we all think individually, one by one, we're going to fill the void? How? I know we've briefly touched on it, but how do you really think?
I don't know. It's right. When Sterling arrived, I was very happy to see him and the video and all that. But I've watched Arsenal. I've watched Sterling in his minutes. I've seen Ben White have a full-on argument with him for not tracking back to the level that Saka does at Bournemouth. I've seen Arteta screaming at him to get back, and I don't want to completely go in on Sterling because I think he's got quality going forward. And I know there was reports of him in training doing well, but like it's just more the fact that defensively he's not the level that we need. And I think in this team, you need to work just as hard going forward as you do going back. And I know Thierry Henry mentioned that to Saka after the Champions League game on CBS, and Saka thanked him for it because like he mentioned that we have to work just as hard. So I don't see it being Sterling. It might be in moments, in flashes where he gets off the bench and plays there, but I don't mind Jesus on the right if I'm being real. I know he's on a run of form where he's scoring goals in the 9, but I think what Jesus, when he's on form and he's confident, he protects the ball well. He's got very good feet. He can bring in other players. He doesn't really use blistering pace, and Saka is very fast. But it's not like Saka goes and just completely just burns out a man. He keeps the ball well and protects it and builds up play and is very technical. And I think will accompany Martin Odegaard the best. I think that's the most natural solution. That's from what I've seen personally. Martinelli out there. Didn't love Havertz, like you mentioned, he was at Leverkusen playing there. That could work, but if not that, then if it's not going to be Jesus on the right, which I think is the most obvious for me, there's a number of players in the Premier League that I could target that I honestly believe. I literally went through today on the way in all the teams. I was like, he'd be great. He'd be great. He'd fit the system. This would be all these players, and I'm sure at some point we'll go through options, but. I think there's people out there, they're on big contracts. And I looked at all the contract ending of all the players in these teams, and it's lot 2029, 2030. I get that. And it's January, so it's going to be tough. But I mean, if you really are desperate to find a solution for it, and you really need to go and find a solution for Saka being missing, there's definitely players available, in my opinion. But if you don't do that, then Jesus is my obvious answer.
Yeah, well, firstly, I feel like we need to go into the January transfer window anyway, because I feel like we're talking about the Premier League here. And this is why I think it's very hard to be critical and be sort of come across from a negative, standpoint, because, I know we play on Wednesday, but if we win that game, we go back to second in the league. We were in this Carabao Cup semi-final. We're playing a Man United team in the FA Cup in the third round. Yes, it's unfortunate being the third ball drawn out and get Man United, but you like to think at home we could go through, and we're in a decent position in the Champions League. So when I say we need to go in the January transfer window, it's not to say these players aren't good enough. We saw what they did last season, but it's just extremely difficult to replicate what we did last season, this season. And then when you take away one of your key players like Bukayo Saka, it's even harder. And we've seen what happens with, there's this thing in football where we can't say about injuries. If you get an injury to one of your best players, it's going to impact your team no matter who you are. Sometimes you just have to admit it. It's this thing about, injuries aren't an excuse. They're not. But if you want Arsenal to play the same way with Bukayo Saka and without, it's not going to work. But we need to sort of how we can do that. And it's not a bad thing to say going in the January transfer window, because these players are brilliant, but you're asking Sterling, Trossard, Jesus, Havertz and Odegaard to not only go again, but there's a team there that can go on all fronts. Like we're looking at like the Champions League, and we could be in the top 8, and you're looking around, and I've watched Real Madrid, not saying we can, we're better than Real Madrid. I'm not saying that at all. But in the Champions League, anything can happen. And you've seen what they've been like in the tournament. They've got a defensive crisis. We're not really sure what's going on with Manchester City with this blip. They might put all their eggs into the Champions League basket, but we haven't lost to them in like the last 3 games we've played, and we haven't conceded to them, apart from the 3 and 4 in the 2-2. So we're like, Manchester City, we don't fear Manchester City as much as we used to do back in the day. And Liverpool's probably the only one you'd really fear now, but we know going to Liverpool at the Emirates, we were disappointed with a 2-2 draw in October with a makeshift back four. So, this could be a really successful season, but now it's kind of up, Arteta signed the contract. We saw the TV interviews. We saw from the club what they were saying. If the Cronkies are really serious and looking at this guy going, actually, you know what? He's maximised what we did last season with these group of players. Now we've lost, one of our best assets in attack. Let's go into the January transfer window and try and get someone, and not someone that would just be happy to sit on the bench. And this is the thing, someone that's going to come in, ruffle some feathers. And when Saka comes back from injury, you're saying, listen, we can't drop him, but we need to put Saka back in. So whoever this guy is, if we play him through the middle, we play him up front, we drop Havertz into midfield, because it gives everyone else, it gives the whole Premier League, imagine if we go out and sign someone, everyone's going, Arsenal is serious. Like, they are serious. They're building. Forget how long it takes. They're still ambitious. They still want to win. They still want to deliver. If we go out and we don't buy anyone in the January transfer window, that tells me a lot. I think it's going to be a massive ask, because if we lose another attacking player for a suspension or for an injury, then we're really, we're short on numbers. Put it this way. On the bench, our attacking option was a 17-year-old. Now, if we're trying to go for a league for the first time in 20 years, I don't think that can possibly happen. And I think that's a massive weight on Ethan's shoulders, as well as the team. So we've got to go and find somewhere in the January transfer window to address the situation, and also do some work on the training pitch. But there can be options there. We can rotate. We can be fluid. But, I think there's no harm in saying, let's see what we can do in the January transfer window, if obviously the money is there.
I think as well, the team we're up against, Liverpool, have showed what you can do in the January window. 2 of their 5 attacking options they've got are Gakpo and Diaz. Both were signed in the January transfer window. It shows you what is, capable and available, not just, of course, with English clubs, but both of those came from 2 leagues not widely regarded, as the most competitive in Europe, in Portugal and, of course, in the Netherlands as well. So there is opportunities for Arsenal, both inside and outside of England. I think that the mood around the club right now is a little bit hyperbolic, I think, because of where we sit. We are a win in our next game away from being, second in the league again and chasing and closing that gap to Liverpool. You're third in the Champions League. You're in the semi-final of the League Cup. You've got a chance to knock out a competitor for the FA Cup in the first round we play. And if we win our next 2 games away at Brentford and Brighton, Arsenal will be 2 points better off after 20 games than they were 20 games in last season, despite this kind of hysteria we have about this season being so much worse. We could still be in a better position after 20 games compared to the previous campaign. So that, I think, brings a little perspective to where we're at. But there are issues behind, and we know that. In the 18 league games we've had, we've either scored 1 or 0 goals in 8 of those games. And in those 8 games, we've lost 14 points. So that's something that needs to be addressed. Arsenal are, without a doubt, the best defensive team, probably in Europe. We can shut out pretty much any side. And, that goes show of records like we've not conceded more than 2 goals in any game in 2024, which is nuts. Absolutely insane. And I think that while that's great, Liverpool, when you watch them, you go, this is by far the most threatening team in the world. And Arsenal have just been unable to kind of combine those 2 aspects. The aspects that have seen them break records in terms of scoring away from home, with 5+ goals in 6 games this year, but also at the same point, been unable to do that consistently enough so that you're just edging past Ipswich, or you're dropping points at home to Everton or at Fulham. And yes, there's things that have gone against us. Injuries have been horrendous. Some refereeing controversies and red cards have cost us as well in games that otherwise would see us close this gap. And Liverpool have had a much more fortuitous fixture list compared to us in the first half. We played the majority of the top 10 teams away from home already. So the optics look positive. But both, Luke and Cecil have highlighted the fact that we need to take control of our own destiny and go into the market in January and take it by the scruff of the neck and take this season by the scruff of the neck by spending some money.
I think that's why. Go on, Luke.
No, I was just saying, because we're in this position where we can't drop any more points. So this is the thing. So on Friday, when people say, it's a must-win game, well, it's just a must-win game on Wednesday, and then the following Saturday, and the following Saturday after that. All the games are a must-win game. So when we have these conversations, we are talking about how we can maximise Arsenal's chances of trying to win the Premier League, because that's what we all want. We all just want to win at all costs. So I don't think it's a bad thing to say we need to go in the January transfer window. We just need some help. But just going back to what you were saying, Tom, about the defensive thing, I've always wondered if that's something to do with Arteta as a player, because we also forget that as a manager, he was a player, and the teams Arteta played in swashbuckling football, some really lovely football on the eye. The players like, Carzola and Radzicki and Ozil in that team. But when we went away to, Liverpool and Anfield and the Etihad and Stamford Bridge, and we were conceding 6 and 5. By the way, when we were top of the league in some of those seasons as well, I think that's always stuck with him. And I think he's now, he knows what it takes to have a team that's so finely built on control and dominance. Now we just need to also go back to last season a little bit and turn the screw a little bit. And I always wonder, just sometimes in terms of the formation, when you've got Gabriel and Saliba and Rice, with that 3 as a spine, and the performances of Jurrien Timber, by the way, this post ACL have been pretty remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I just wonder if you've got that spine, if that's enough, and you can go with more Odegaard, Havertz, or Odegaard, maybe Wanyeri, if people think, or even in some games, maybe Odegaard and Trossard in there. I know it's not worked for time, but it might be something to relook at again. And then go with Martinelli, Jesus, and maybe Sterling, or maybe that's when you dip into the market and get someone else that can add to the forward line. Maybe that would just give us the spark that something else. And when you've got players like Calafiori as well at left back and Lewis Skelly, and they can all invert in as well, and Rice can push in, the team is there. That's why the team is really, really good. It's really strong, but it just needs a little bit of help. And that's the thing. It's not we wouldn't be saying we could win the league if we didn't really believe it, right? Football fans are not that stupid. If your team is in the top 4 race, you'd say it. If your team is, challenging for Europa League, you'd say it. But you look at this team and you look what it's done over the last 2.5 seasons. It's really good. You don't win 16 games, draw 1 and lose 1 in 2024 and be that close to winning the league if you're not a good side. You're an incredible side, but we just need to replicate that form in the second half of the season without dropping points, which is going to be a massive ask.
Yeah, I think fans, for me, it's I always try and look to the positive side. I'm very,
you have to.
I believe a lot, and I'm very positive a lot of the time.
Do.
I think I think just it is that. I don't feel like we're too far off. It's the little tweaks in January. It's the attacking options for me, and I think fans get a bit frustrated because we've been screaming for a striker or a top attacker for a few windows now, and Arteta seems to just keep trying to bolster the defence, which, to be fair to him, has worked. You mentioned, Tom, how good we've been defensively. I think it's very clear that how good we are, but it's the attacking side now, and it's like we can see it, and it's not. And for me, I just want silverware this season, so it's not like everyone's looking at the Premier League. But I tell you what, we're in, like you said, we're in semi-finals, we're in quarterfinals, we're going into we'll be in the knockout stage, probably in Champions League as well. Like, there's a lot of things that we can still hold on to, but it needs that small adjustment. It needs a little bit more bolstering. I look at Liverpool, and I always look at obviously you look at the people that are in front. I was doing it with City last season or the season before, but Liverpool, you look at their bench, coming off the bench, they've got players like Jota, who, if once you had a hard day trying to defend against, I don't know, a Salah, and you see Jota coming on, you're just like, oh my God. Or a Nunez. Nunez is, again, I don't rate him personally, but I tell you what, if I was a defender, after you've had a lot of attacking, back and forth, you see him come off the bench, you're like, oh, for goodness sake. And you said there, Luke, like, we had Ethan Wanyeri as the only attacking option on the weekend. So like, or on the game against Ipswich. So it's just like, if you have more of that, and I granted, again, injuries are a thing that happens to all clubs, I think you have a bit more hope, you have a bit more desire. I think fans have a bit more, belief in we have changers on the bench just to seal a win or whatnot. So it's small little adjustments. I don't think we're being unfair in demanding signings this January window. I think they can be very, very key to, how your season ends. And there's so many when I look at the fixture list in January, I'm like, oh my God, like you don't get no rest, and we've already got Saka out. So I'm like, come on board, come on Arsenal. Like you are aware of this more than all of us. You're going to need players. And yeah, that's just kind of, I have to just get out because it's something we do need to definitely as fan base just say, look, January, please do something in the window because we need it.
So just before we move on from talking about the window, obviously we've been talking about the fact that Fabio Vieira may potentially return from Porto. Tom, do you not think that's likely at all then?
Oh, I've been told categorically that he's not coming back. We also heard from Vita Bruno, the Porto boss, who came out and said that he's expecting him to be with them for the end of the season. So, yeah, any fans holding out hope that that's not the case, there's your answer.
Let me piggyback on that as well. I'm sorry, Fabio Vieira, listen, big him up, good technical player. He isn't the answer to save our season. I'm not even trying to be disrespectful there. I just think he's not going to be, the Saka replacement, even because obviously he has played out on the right, but even if he goes into that midfield, again, that's not a solution. So yeah, again, rumours have been put to bed anyway online yesterday, but yeah, that's not the answer in my opinion. Recalling players like Fabio Vieira to come and try and save the season. But yeah, there's other options. Again, I've mentioned there's plenty in the league and some hopefully out the league that Arsenal can address.
Well, it doesn't seem like it's even an option anymore because Tom categorically told us it's a no. So let's move on to Brentford now. We're playing them on New Year's Day. Let's hope it's a perfect start to 2025. I was about to say 24, so 25. God, got to get the years right. Is this a very tricky game for us then? The silence all round is going to be yes.
Brentford are just one of those teams, aren't they, that you just fear sometimes irrationally, but then also they can put up some really interesting results. Their home record is exceptional.
Really good.
You know, I think that they lost the other day, and that was their first home loss of the season.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's and they're a team that, you know, have caused Arsenal problems. If it wasn't for a very late Kai Havertz's goal last season, we wouldn't have got the 3 points. We were beaten, you know, at their place in the opening game of their first kind of season in the top flight. So it's no guarantees. But this is still a game that you look at Arsenal and say, we want to see a brilliant start to the new year. You want to see a response to, you know, the adversity that we've got with players being injured. I'd quite like to see Arsenal change a couple of players for this one. In particular, we were talking earlier, about having only Ethan Nwaneri on the bench. I'd like us to have a bit more on the bench. So start some other players so that you've got options if indeed the game's not going your way and you're not scrambling around, you know, for some solutions. I think that's something that we need to look to. I think you look at Calafiori as potentially a player who could come back in. I've liked Miles Lewis-Skelly a lot, and I think he's really good. But I think also you've got to think about the number of games and the importance of some of the games we've got coming up after this as well, and start to give players like Calafiori who've returned from injury and get him back fit and playing. I think that's important. It doesn't mean you can't bring on Miles later on in the game, of course, as well. And I think player like Mikel Moreno, I think against Ipswich, you know, when he came off the bench and we moved Havertz back to centre forward, we looked arguably the most dangerous during that 10 to 15 minute spell after he came on than we'd looked all game. We've created some really good openings for Odegaard and Moreno himself. So he, I think, has got a shout of coming in for this one too. But it's going to be tough, as every single game is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you mentioned about, you know, they've only lost one game at home this season, and that was right. But I look back at, I think it was 2 seasons ago. I think when Ethan actually made his debut against them, they were I think it was that game they were unbeaten at home as well, and we came in and we absolutely wiped the floor with them as well. So Brentford always can throw up something. I think these next 2 away games, even Brighton away, even though we've got a pretty good record there, you just feel like I think every Arsenal fan has this feeling. Listen, we have to win, so you have a feeling of, oh, we can't lose. So let's just. I'm nervous for every game, and that's literally my emotions every time I watch Arsenal at the moment. But yeah, I believe we should be able to get it done. They've got a lot of injuries. I mean, we're speaking of Luke. Me and you was discussing. You know, Brentford have most said their defenders are basically out with injury as well. They've got a massive injury list, so hopefully we can exploit that. Obviously, we have key players out. We have a key player out. Sorry, in Bukayo Saka, but we should be able to get the job done. The importance of this, you know, you win, you go second, and then you start the year right. And, you know, it's just you get in a rhythm, a momentum. Like I mentioned before, there's a lot of fixtures in January. It'd be amazing if we start the new year with a win. Plus, I'll be there a little bit hungover probably, but it'd be nice to celebrate with a smile. So, yeah, a win to 2025.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll win. It's just the way the game's going to go, because if we go 1-0 up, you know, the incentive will be on to try and get the second goal. But, you know, the longer the time ticks on and that, Brentford get a spell of possession, because every team in the Premier League where you play against, they're going to have a spell of possession. And that's why we're so good defensively, because we feel really cool and calm when we're defending, and we've got, you know, one of the best back fours in the Premier League, if not the best. And our Liverpool fans will probably screaming now because I said that. You know, one of the best goalkeepers as well. So was it 23 clean sheets in 50 games for David Raya? Like, it's just a astonishing record. It's nuts. So,
wow.
Yeah, it's the same thing that I said against Ipswich. It's must win. It's the same thing against Brentford. The only thing with Brentford and Brighton is that the fact that we've got a break because we've got Newcastle in the Cup and Manchester United in the Cup, I feel that is a little bit of a significant importance, purely because if we do get the 6 points from these 2 games, then you can sort of go, right, that's parked, and you've got the January transfer window going on in the background. Let's attack Newcastle in the semi-final. Let's attack, because then by the time you play Spurs, and you know, you don't need anything to get you up for a North London derby. You know, you could be a second in the Premier League. You could be through to the, you know, maybe have 1 foot in the final. You know, if we take the home game as aggressive as we can, because going to St James's Park is going to be very tough. And then if we beat Manchester United, all of a sudden you're in mid-January. You know what's going on down the road, and we're all delighted to see it, and we can't wait for them to come down because we've got no defenders as well. And let's be honest, we never lose at the Emirates in the North London Derby. You have to go back to 2010, so that's not going to happen. So that'll be fun. So,
touch wood.
Yeah, let's not change the narrative here today.
Some things do not change. Don't worry, fine.
I get
But
worried.
then, and then you've got Villa at home, and in the space of that whole 3 weeks in January, we could be looking at a really good picture, or we can be doing the absolute reverse, and we could take like a draw against Brentford, and we could be out of one of the cup competitions, or behind against Newcastle, or out, the FA Cup third round again, which has been quite unfortunate because the recent draws we've had haven't been quite pretty. So it's every month's massive, but I feel this one, with the context involved, I think this one's really important. So yeah, let's start off with the win. I'd be interested to see what the team news is. I've always said this, and I say it to everyone, I am very worried about Timber, only because how much football he's playing with that injury, and he's been remarkable, but we haven't really got anyone else, and I do not want to see Thomas Partey play right back. So that's my only concern, because I think there's going to be a time where, I don't know, it just feels like he needs to rest, but how do we rest? How do we get his manage his minutes? I don't know when Ben White's coming back. I know they said 2025, but he's not going to be match fit until February at the earliest. And then, Tomiyasu, I think he's got 10 nights, so he doesn't really know. One day he might feel fine, the next he might feel like he's got pain again, so we can't really rely on him. That's the only concern in this busy run coming up, that's my only concern.
Something just twigged in my brain that he might actually put Thomas Partey right back, to put Timber left back to stop Mbeumo, and I hope that's not the case, because I hate seeing Partey at right back, but someone needs, and Mbeumo's in tremendous form, and I think there's someone you need to kind of stop. And I've seen him, he did that against Fulham. Adama Traore swapped over to the weaker side when we played. I don't know, I feel like he might be trying to counteract.
I can't stand right-footed players at left back. I just know it just distorts all your angles when you're trying to play, and especially the Newcastle game. Had Timber left back, he's running into Rice's line, and then Martinelli's like 40 yards away from the box, and that's why I don't like it. Just play players in the right position. Look at Lewis Kelly, just play players in the right position. Left foot is a left back, right foot is a right back.
We have Calafiori. We don't need to do this.
That's there. That's this. I'm hoping so.
We have 4 left backs on the bench the other day and played Lewis Kelly. We have options.
Calafiori and Mbeumo, he should be able to do. Calafiori is a good player. I think because he's been out. I don't know. Maybe it's just me being like, I think fans as well at times they looked at little things where his defensively wasn't great, but Calafiori is a strong, very good defender. I think him and Timber have come in and have actually bolstered that defense. So you're right. We shouldn't have to worry. I just don't want to. I don't want him to tinker when Arteta does that. And before we move, I know we're on Brentford. We're on the Brentford section. That Ifmanieri thing, by the way, as I'm on talkSPORT, when he brought him on, they mentioned it was all arrogance from Arteta at that time when he was 15-year-old. Let me just make that clear. Now look and see how well he's done. And I'm sorry. No. Being on this platform, I have to make sure I mention that. You're completely wrong, my friend. Because Ifmanieri is the truth.
I didn't say it.
It wasn't arrogance of Mikel Arteta to break a record.
It was interesting, though.
Very good player. I have to make that very clear. Right, while I'm here.
Making a point, Cecil. Thank you. I appreciate it. But I just want to make...
Sorry,
No, don't be silly. I just want to make a note on Timber. I've got to respect him, because coming back from an ACL injury, you can come back from an ACL injury in so many different ways. But I can tell personally his mindset. He's come back strong, and coming back from that sort of thing, your mindset can be affected a lot. Obviously, physically, it's the test of time. You don't know physically, but you have to have a strong mindset when you come back from something like that, because we see so many different players come back from so many different injuries, and they change. They change a lot. But with him, I feel that he's come back strong. And I think it's so important to come back with that mindset, because then it does actually help you physically moving forward.
I spoke to him after the game the other night. His twin brother was actually down to watch the game as well. Quentin was in. He's obviously plays for Feyenoord as well. And it was interesting trying to interview somebody when their brother's poking his head around the corner trying to put him off the whole way through, which was quite amusing. But Timber's Jurrien is genuinely one of the nicest blokes as well. Competency, professionalism, it is all there with him. And he's come back from this injury. He took it in his strides. He's used that time off to familiarise himself completely with his new club, completely understand the Arsenal way of life and what the system is about under Mikel Arteta. So involved, despite not being able to actually kick a football during that year. And I think that, he's, despite, Luke's adversity to seeing him play on the left-hand side, when he has played there, I think he has still shown, plenty of quality. I remember that Community Shield game, at the start of last season before he actually got that injury. He did really well against Man City at left-back in that game in particular. It was actually only when he came off for Tierney we conceded in that game. So I think that while it's a needs must when he goes there, and it only should be a needs must, I think that having a player like him who can kind of, overlap as well more naturally with whoever's on the right-hand side. One of the questions I asked him was, what it was like playing with a new partner on the right-hand side, because Gabriel Martinelli being right-footed, playing with somebody left-footed, and he described it as being different. But, he was really backing Martinelli to deliver, and he knows that he is better than perhaps what maybe we're seeing at the moment. And I think that those two, the more you play them together, they might indeed explore that. But I also think, Cecil mentioned Waneri. I think we have an opportunity here to use him on the right-hand side. He's naturally left-footed, small, diminutive, can beat a man. I think he's got a lot of similar characteristics to Saka. And of course, when you've played so much with a right-footed right-back and a left-footed right winger, that re-establishing perhaps that type of connection and familiarisation could be important for Arsenal moving forwards.
So then let's just move back to what we were talking about with regards to how important the month is coming up. And obviously, do we think that, especially with all our games coming up, is it more important with Liverpool's form, especially at the moment? And then did anyone also expect West Ham to get something before their game? Luke, I want to throw this one over to you. You're already saying no.
No, I mean, look, I watched it partly yesterday. I say partly because I was distracted in the office doing other things. But I can't understand what Lopetegui was trying to do. And I couldn't really understand what Lopetegui was trying to do against us anyway, because it was like, there was no aggressive press. Then it was just sitting your shape. But there was no real desire to try and score or create any moments. I know yesterday could have hit the post, but I said this will be 3-0 at half time. You can just see a game plan. I think I saw at one point like Edison Alvarez was playing ahead of Lucas Paquetá in midfield. I'm thinking, what is that? What's going on here? But I think about us, I just go back to the same things. It's just the mindset and the relentlessness. And I go back to Liverpool yesterday. There was a little bit in the game where I saw, and I think it was Robertson had the ball and he was at left back and he just cut inside. And I saw McAllister and Diaz both go forward. And it was like, can we play the ball forward? And he was coming inside. So the easy option is to play the ball back to Van Dijk. But it was just a little thing, and I just saw their number 6 is just running. And it's all about, can we score? Can we score? Can we score? Can we score?
Yeah.
Can we score? It's relentless. It's relentless. And you go back to Salah, in the first 8 minutes of the game yesterday, he had 2 big chances. If we look at what we did against Ipswich, and at 45 minutes, we had 3. Arguably 3, a couple of openings. So that's just the difference, I think, with the mindset and just being relentless. And I just think, yes, the results are so important, but I also think performances are just as more important. And you go back to last season when we were emptying out stadiums and who put the ball in the back of the net. Because we were so good and we were so dominant and we were scoring this sheer amount of goals, everyone was watching going, God, they're unbelievable. Like, they're unbelievable. They're not giving anything away and they're putting you to the sword. Now, I just think, like, even tomorrow, we know how good the Premier League is. This is like a bigger conversation, but the fact that Forest are second at the moment, the fact that Bournemouth are fighting for Europe, the fact that Fulham are up there, there's a conversation to add to be asked is whether the Premier League is stronger now than it's ever been, because every team has got quality. I was watching Wolves yesterday. We're talking about a Wolves team that are in the relegation zone or fighting to stay up. Got players like Mateus Cunha and Andre and João Gomez in that team, and Wright and Ignori. That's not a team that goes down. I even look at the team that Ipswich have got. Chelsea and Manchester United and Spurs are supposed to be looking, they're after Liam Delap. He's a very, very good striker. I even look at Southampton, rock bottom. I still think there's 4 or 5 players in that team that are Premier League quality. Some might disagree. So, Wednesday, if we go 1-0 up, with 10 minutes to go, players like Mbeumo, Wissa, Kevin Schade, Damsgaard, Jensen, these players can pick out a moment of magic from anywhere. So the best way you can give yourself the best possible chance is having been 2-0 up, then going up, or 3-0 up and going. And I know it's difficult. I know it's the Premier League. I know it's hard. But if the game is there to be taken by the scruff of the neck and you've got the incentive and we're on the front foot, let's go for the second goal rather than have what we hold sort of thing. And I think that was going to take us all through the months. Spurs, Villa, Zagreb, and I think it's Wolves at the end of the month. And now it's a more resurgent Wolves. And that's another thing. If you look at all the teams, it's the first part of the season done. But every team, is going to have their own story. So, playing Crystal Palace when we play Crystal Palace might be completely different to a team there when they play Crystal Palace in March or April. Or, Europa League might take precedence for teams like Bournemouth and Fulham. So they might be, taking one eye off the Premier League. And then the FA Cup comes into consideration. So there's so much context, so many variables. But all we need to do is focus on ourselves. But I just know we can do it. And I think we will. I don't think we'll lose a game in January, put it that way. We won't lose a game. We've only lost 2 games this season. That's the thing. People really forget how good we are. We've lost 2 games all season. And this is when Arteta talked about raising the standards. The conversation we're having now is about a team that could potentially go second, 6 points off. Yes, Liverpool played a game more, in a very good position in the Champions League and got all eyes on 4 competitions. That's what he meant by raising the standards. And it's nuts because I'm not criticising them. I'm just saying how I feel. And when your team is so good, you just want them to get. You look at the 2024 table. Most wins, most goals, least goals conceded, most goals scored. It's every metric is a positive. The only thing we haven't done is lifted a trophy over our heads. That's all we have to do.
I mean, when the team is so good, you want to keep singing that song. Who put the ball in? I'm gonna say West Ham's net because that was a great song. I'm just got it rolling in my head now.
And Lisbon a few weeks ago, it was back, and then it's just and this is the thing, the international break, the draws against Fulham and Everton, again, that's probably sort of changed the narrative a little bit. We haven't lost since coming back.
I think this is the most adversity Arsenal have faced this season in terms of all factors. I'm talking about injuries, I'm talking about controversial decisions, I'm talking about how other teams operate. You think about how teams were going think about the mindset of a team going into playing Arsenal 3 years ago compared to how they go into a game against Arsenal now. It's night and day. 3 years ago, Arsenal was seen as a team that were fallible, a team that could be got at, a team that could be bullied. And now Arsenal, after having competed for the title for the last 2 years and are aiming to do so for this 3rd year in a row, teams approach you differently. I talked about the other day, Man City have lost their sheen this season, where teams like Aston Villa would rotate last season against them because they had more important games coming up and they just assumed that, they would be losing that fixture. Whereas teams now, and the reason why Man City are also dropping points is because teams think they can be got at. Arsenal need to regain that they had at the end of in the last half of last season. So this new year, starting with Brentford, Arsenal have to really, I think, go in an aggressive fashion into these fixtures and put
it's a fear factor.
Put the fear back into these teams. Because if you don't have that, you don't win the title. And Liverpool have got that right now, and Arsenal need to get it and hope that Liverpool kind of get a knock and kind of get tipped off their balance a little bit in these weeks to come.
I was going to just chime in just briefly about just Liverpool, and was watching them, and they're very on the front foot all the time. Thierry Henry said it, as you can probably tell, I'm a fan favourite of Thierry Henry, but he mentioned that in his analysis, I think a few weeks ago in the Champions League, said Liverpool are they're going to win the game. Arsenal are going to not lose, and it rang so true. It's they want to keep going at you and keep trying wave after wave to score goals, and we're very good at, like you said, mentioned earlier in the show, control and just not losing. I think there's definitely a difference. That's a mindset thing. That's something where I saw last season, that we were more going to win the game instead of just control it completely. So again, going into this new year, I think you're right. We need to just kick on and it shouldn't take too much to change from the team that we have to go on and just and beat teams off quite convincingly and send some messages down the Premier League. But yeah, it'll be interesting. And you kind of started this question by asking about, when Liverpool play West Ham, what the feeling was. I mean, I thought West Ham were going to be better. I don't know why. And then it started. I said, nah. I didn't watch it for too long because I just knew what was coming. It's the same with, I spoke about it recently as well, the Leicester game. We went 1-0 up Leicester against Liverpool. I was like, this is it? Hold on. They're going to drop. And then I was like, Cecil, look how early the goal is. Come on, we've been here. We're not naive. And then I ended up, we saw what happened in that game. So it's interesting. I think it's something that, again, is a mindset, something we need to change, because even against Ipswich, they had a big chance straight away, and that could have changed. That could put the game on its head, if I'm being honest. So we got to be very aware of these little things. No matter who you play, like you mentioned, there's good quality, but we got to really focus on killing off teams, because small moments can change the game. And I know it didn't. That one against Ipswich, that really could have. A better person that forward line scores that, or at least it's a target. So it's small margins, but I'm positive. I'm considering. I'm believing that things can go our way this season. That we could be lifting a trophy by the end of the season.
And just going back to what you said, Cecil, about the Liverpool game, in October, don't forget, like Salah equalised, after 80 minutes? So they're about 15, 17 minutes of the game. And if you looked at our back four then, they didn't really siege, they come to our goal and really pepper us in the last 15, 17 minutes. Yeah, they were more than happy to pick up the point because they respect us about the team. So we've got that respect there. And I still think teams will they know this, Thomas Frank is, he's one of the best managers in the Premier League in my eyes. And he always speaks about how highly these teams are. And last season, he was like Arsenal, wow, and Liverpool the same. They don't stop scoring when they met earlier in the season. So we are still there, definitely. It's not over or anything. I know people will say it's done and whatever, but it's not. When you have these conversations with Arsenal fans, you can feel it, and it's definitely not over. It's the team's really, really good. It just needs to go on one of their runs that it did last season, and I think they can do it. But I think it will be an extraordinary ask to do it again without adding in the January transfer window, and I think that is quite important, personally.
Yeah. Or Dubai. one of the two. Take the team to Dubai. One of the two.
There's too many games. Unless there's a game in Dubai, that's not happening.
They took it away from us. They took Dubai away from us this year. We needed it. So then a very, very, very brief word about our favourites, Spurs. I want a one-word answer from everyone. Do we think Ange will be sacked by the time we play them in January?
That's a good question.
That's more than one word. Come on. Oh, everyone's really thinking.
No. I'll say no.
No.
Who have they got? Who have they got in between us? Sorry, I know it's one word.
I got one word from everyone else.
Okay, Newcastle home. Sorry, cup game.
Yeah.
Okay,
Liverpool.
They lose to Tamworth.
We're just waiting for you now.
Yeah. If they lose to Tamworth, then maybe. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they lose to Tamworth. I'm sorry. He has to go. That would be sensational if they could do that. Okay, I'm gonna say.
Come on, Cecil.
Yeah, just really different. I'm gonna say yes. Although there's not much. I'm hoping they lose to Tamworth on penalties.
Fair enough. If they lose to Tamworth, then it's gotta happen, no?
Yeah,
I mean they drew to Wolves. Yeah, Newcastle. It's tough.
It's tough. That cup game against Liverpool is not going to be pretty for them.
I just want to see that high line at Tamworth. That's what I just want to see. I'm dreaming of it. Right.
Come on, Tamworth.
I know the Tamworth. It'd be unbelievable. No, they should have too much for Tamworth. They should. Should's a good word for it. They should have too much for Tamworth.
This is Tottenham we're talking about. Tamworth away on a. Oh, that's on a Sunday. I thought it was on a cold Wednesday night, but it's on a Sunday.
I think it's a cold Saturday morning, isn't it, or something? Sunday morning, maybe? I don't know.
Sunday morning, yeah, 12:30 Sunday morning. Hey, you never know.
You don't want to go Tamworth 12:30 in the morning.
You never know. You never know. So we're going to wait and see, hey?
Maybe we'll be the team that gets in the boot when they come to us on the Wednesday and they lose by a few goals.
Yeah, it's Arsenal. Teams always sack their coaches before Arsenal.
Yeah, it could be. That could be some stunning stuff from us.
They'll all be back. Romero, Van de Ven. It'll be a fully fit Spurs team.
Harry Kane starting, mate.
Dembele in midfield again. Where's he come from? No, they'll all be back.
Okay, well, we've got Spurs coming up in a while, so we'll speak about that in a few weeks. So then, I just want to move on, and Arsenal they finally played their final game of the calendar year so far. So what I want to know is, I want to know your favourite Arsenal moments from the entire year. So from the middle of last season to where we are now. Your favourite Arsenal moment of 2024?
Go on, Cecil.
All right. Okay, this is tough. Do you know what? No, for me, because again, it's just the experience I went through. Obviously, West Ham, the 6-0. 6? 5? 6? 5? 6? 6.
You can't make it your favourite memory if you can't get the stat right.
No, it was because do you know what it was? It was because I lived through what we're talking about. I was at the games when we lost to West Ham at their place, and the way they were going in on Declan Rice and like you signed for a small club or you went to a bigger club and all, and they were singing it, and I could see it was affecting him and whatnot. And then to watch him play and score an absolute screamer against his old team, And it's not just that; it's just the fact we was playing swashbuckling football then, was on fire. Yeah, and the fact I was away at the time watching it with Zingano, obviously AFTV and Robbie and that, and there was so much passion from those fans and just being immersed amongst it all. Incredible. So for me, that one stands out to me. Then just some honourable mentions just quickly. Aston Villa away this season, very good. Big them up. And obviously the Spurs wins as well, always sensational. Spurs ones will probably be, sorry, I'm taking a few of them for honourable mentions, but I'm assuming might be for you guys. But yeah, I think the West Ham for me, because of where I was, how, the story of Declan Rice and whatnot, and it was a quality game. I'll just pluck that out. Hopefully that's good enough. Anyone else?
Yeah, it would usually be winning at Spurs, because we do it so often now. It's kind of lost its it's lost its gleam a bit. It's kind of just an expectation to win at Tottenham these days. But I think for me, like David Raya saving that penalty to take Arsenal through to the quarterfinals, which we hadn't been in 14 years, and there was such a stigma, surrounding Arsenal in Europe and not getting to that stage. And I know that it was really disappointing to go out to a Bayern side that I felt that we should have, knocked out ourselves. But, it really was just, I love like last minute things, because, it's not a last minute goal scoring moment, but it's completely the opposite in a way. It's the last minute goal saving moment from Raya that takes you there. And there was such discourse around Raya as well about had Arsenal made the right choice. The Ramsdale kind of back and forth debate, which, by the way, these days is not even a conversation anymore, because for me, Raya has become, at the moment, the best goalkeeper in the league. So when you're looking at that consistency and looking where we've been, that Raya moment where he saved that penalty and the team were able to kind of just celebrate a moment in Europe that was really important, that I hope sets us up as a foundation and confidence for this season and seasons moving forward as well.
Yeah, because I was lucky enough to go to the away leg, and then I went the first leg, away. So when
lucky,
yeah, I was lucky. I know, no shots on target, and I had one of the best times of my life. It was unbelievable. But then going from that and then going to Saturday, when we played the Newcastle on the 4-1 on the Saturday night, it was an unbelievable week. But I don't want to take the Porto one away from you, so it's difficult. I would have to say probably the 3-1 win against Liverpool. Mm-hmm. Purely because the Emirates, like Dan Martinelli, because the funny thing is about that is that at half time I was absolutely like ranting, and then I was angry because I was like, this is why we're not going to win this, because they don't make mistakes like that. We battered them for 45 minutes and now it's 1-1. And obviously Van Dijk goes and makes that mistake and Martinelli puts it in the back of the net. But it was the atmosphere, and when Trossard put it in, it was just like, it was unbelievable. Mm. It was just unbelievable. And even though like we weren't, obviously, I think we were 5 points behind them before the game, and it closed the gap to 2, it just felt bigger than 3 points. And obviously I know it didn't transpire to go into anything, but yeah, that feeling I had, it was similar to the feeling when Martinelli, I'm not following the when Martinelli scored against City. So that, just the raw emotion when that ball hits the back of the net, I was like, this is unbelievable. So I'd have to say the Liverpool game. But then obviously that period of just emptying out stadiums was just great, wasn't it? But the Liverpool game, I think the 3-1 was just, superb.
Yeah, the emptying out stadiums was class. That was class. I'm actually just going to pipe in, and I'm going to say my favourite one was the Porto game when we did the penalties. I worked that game on AFTV with Cecil, and I think for me as well, just the whole atmosphere, we all stood up there like lemons, honestly, with our arms around each other. Thank God we won that game, but it just was such an amazing experience, and it made it all that bit better. Yeah.
I agree.
It was indeed. Well, anyway, guys, that is all we've got time for this week. It's not a bad 2024, but let's hope for an even better 2025. A huge thanks to Tom Canton, Cecil G. Thomas, and Luke Henry. We'll see you on Thursday after Brentford, twice in 1 week, you lucky guys. And have a great new year. Happy New Year to everybody. And remember, trust the process.